And so there it is. It's been proclaimed. This child was born. We are told that he was indeed the Savior of the world, God's own Son, God's own self, right there, in a peasant woman's arms, in a cave, and the rest of us wondering what's going on. This is that gift that we've been told about. Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Eternal Father, Prince of Peace. And so we celebrate that tonight. We celebrate that it happened. We celebrate that because of it, there's something powerful running through our lives, running through our worlds, running through our hearts, now, yet, today. We have the privilege of seeing that before our very eyes, from day to day, as God redeems and reconciles, picks up his people, wraps his arms around us, and says, I give you my life, which is fuller, more complete than any life that you've been chasing after up until this point. Yet we also have the privilege, I would say, or the responsibility, also before our very eyes, to see a lot of pain, a lot of struggle, a lot of sadness, a lot of frustration, a lot of things that don't work out. These songs, they tell us that in a way that everything's going to be perfect with the birth of Jesus Christ, and yet we don't quite see all of that yet. We haven't seen it quite yet. See, here's the thing, as people, what we often like to do is we like to stand at the end of the river. We like to stand at the end of the river because that's where people that fell into the river and are drowning from the rushing torrents reach out their hand. And we love to reach out our hand and we love to pull them out of that river water and essentially rescue them. That's what we love to do. There's a really powerful feeling in pulling someone out of the water right before the water overtakes them and they go down. That's what we get the most satisfaction out of. But here's the thing. We rarely like to, or ever even think to, actually go upstream and figure out why people are falling into the water in the first place. Rarely do we like to go to that part before people even fall into the river to say, hey, I wouldn't get too close because I've seen a lot of people fall in here and it's not that good. You see, that's what Jesus did. Jesus wasn't born into our lives, into this world, to stand at the end of the river and pull people out. Jesus does that. We're told in Luke's Gospel, chapter 4, we're told exactly that Jesus actually came before the people just as his official ministry was to begin. This is 30 years later. Came before the people and said, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me because the Lord has anointed me. He has sent me to preach the good news to the poor. He sent me to proclaim release to the prisoners. He has sent me to proclaim recovery to the sight of the blind, to liberate the oppressed, and to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. But we see that in Jesus' birth, it didn't all happen in a heartbeat. Instead, Jesus went up the river, joins us in that relationship, rather than simply rescuing us and fixing us in the midst of our deepest pain. Instead, Jesus invites us into a relationship up the river to walk with us in the midst of our pain, the midst of our frustrations, to be with us, to encourage us, to show us an entirely different life. That while we appreciate the water, that we receive its resources, we don't fall in and it doesn't sweep over us, threatening to join us. That's where Jesus is, waiting for us, inviting for us. That's why you see a church. We know that not everything's perfect. We know that there's a lot of pain. In fact, we beg people with a lot of pain and imperfection in their lives to come here and receive that relationship that will either steer them away from the river, to steer you away from the river, or indeed to help you get out and not fall back in again. That's why we pour into children so much, because we're going up the river before they fall in, to show them that people love them, to show them that there's a God who loves them more than they can comprehend, more than any parent, any relative, any foster parent could ever show. God is there in extraordinary ways. That's going up the river. That's every Sunday, sharing his good news, getting really excited at Christmas, getting really overcome, becoming really overcome at Easter with his good news and his light overcoming the death and the darkness that's going up the river. And so as we celebrate tonight Jesus' birth, and we look around our world, and if those two don't match up, that not everything is as perfect as we were promised it would be, or as the songs say that it should be, let it be an invitation for each of us to go up the river. Let it be an invitation for each of us to pursue that relationship that grows a life in the midst of our lives that is unmistakably powerful, holy, and filled with love and grace. And so today we invite you, because of Jesus' birth, we invite you to go up the river. Whether you do that in this church, in this community, or whether you do that in another community, we invite you to go up the river. Friends, the birth of Christ in the world as we celebrate it today is no more real, is no more present than the birth of Christ in your hearts tonight. If he is not born right here in the smack dab in the midst of all you've got going on, we will not see him be born in this world. So I invite you to be a part of this massive movement that goes up the river, that sees change, that sees what these songs are singing about to their very fullest because of how he wants to walk with us. Let us celebrate that. Let us give glory to our God.